and welcome to the Unhinged History Podcast, the podcast where two compulsive nut jobs are going to binge spooky-ish stories, hauntings, and the whole nine during this month, and then regurgitate those stories upon the ear holes of the friend that has chosen to put their headphones on. I'm host one. I'm Teresa, and that.
I'm Angie. And in case you're curious, we both have our ear holes plugged with our headphones.
It's better
I'm
this
not sure if
way.
I worded that right. Hmm. I'm thinking about it. I legit don't know how to start my story, so do you care if I just start talking?
Sure.
Okay, great. Um, I am going to tell you a little bit about Genghis Khan, and then I'm going to tell you about a man named Pyotr Kozlov. They go together, I promise.
About to say Genghis Khan, I'm aware of. Second
Okay,
name, not so much.
not so much. Okay, so my sources are a New York Times article from October 30th of 1927. Do you care to hear the title of this article? Because this is what got me.
Uh, I'm going to say yes because I'm all
Yes,
about
okay.
them sources.
Tomb of Genghis Khan found in Gobi Desert. Llamas guarded the secret for 700 years.
Two of what found?
Tomb of
Oh,
Genghis Khan.
tomb. I heard
Yeah,
two. Two
that's
of
actually
Genghis
fair,
Khan.
okay? Then there is a following New York Times article from November 12th of 1927. Kozlov explains Gobi Desert tomb. Russian explorer believes burial mound older than that of Genghis Khan. I'm not going to read the rest of what the title of that is because it will ruin my story. There is a great article in True Republican, which is a Illinois-based newspaper from November of 1924, which I thought was super fun. The article is titled "Garden of Eden gives up bones of new species." Yeah,
Oh.
it's a pretty fun article. There is a very small and very sad article on Wikipedia on Peter Koslov, which was devastating because there's almost nothing written in English about him. So I did some very deep digging to learn anything that I possibly could. That said, there is a translated to English from Russians. It's called the Geographer's Bibliological Studies. It's like a quarterly column that comes out, written by Alexander Andreevy and Tatiana Yusupov, and it's about Peter Kuzmich Koslov. There is a BBC article from February of 22, Why Genghis Khan's Tomb Can't Be Found. And I just have to share this one with you because it's so dumb. The Silver Coffin of Genghis Khan, Haunted Ohio Books. I don't know why Illinois and Ohio are involved in my story at all, but there you have it. And a Life Science article about what we think we know about Genghis Khan's death from also of 22. So, all that said, I was researching something very different a couple of months ago when I saw that first 1927 article, Tomb of Genghis Khan found in Gobi Desert. So I needed to look into it a little bit deeper. Now the original headline that led me to that was claiming that the Khan's tomb had been found recently, like in the last 6 months. And it was from one of those just like rage bait trash websites.
Yeah.
So I didn't even bother clicking it. I literally just like Googled, hey, like what's going on? And that's where I saw this 1927 article. Okay. Um, and if only for my love of the Genghis Khan story did I believe that no one's ever going to find his tomb. So this is obviously a Bubkiss article anyways. But that's how I got to this New York Times article, and it's been so much fun ever since. And let me just say, papers written in the 20s were so much more fun and creative than they are today. Like, we need to go back to that kind of writing. We're mi really missing out on that.
Go
With all
on.
that said, I'm going to give you a refresher on Genghis Khan because for anybody that doesn't know, it's a fun thing to talk about. Um, to start, I'm going to give you a snippet from the New York Times article. It reads, quote, "The tomb of Genghis Khan, the great Mongolian conqueror who lived from 1162 to 1227 AD, has been discovered by Professor Peter Kozlov, a Russian archaeologist near the ruins of the dead city of Karakoto in the Gobi Desert, according to the Sunday Express. Professor Kozlov, who has been exploring Central Asia since 1883, has thus solved Asia's greatest archaeological mystery, the Express says. The Great Khan's bones, Professor Kozlov reports, lie in a silver coffin which rests upon the 78 crowns of princes and khans whom he conquered.
Dang.
That's a visual, right? So now that that's firmly affixed in your brain, Temujin, later known as Genghis Khan, was born around 1162, give or take. We don't have the exact date. What we know about his early life comes from a book that I did not include the name of at the top of my sources. I don't know why, but it comes from The Secret History of Mongols. Now, this is the oldest known work of Mongolian history and literature. It's written shortly after his death. So just take everything about his early life with a grain of salt because we don't have a firsthand account. What we have is what they knew, right? So some stories could be embellished, some stories could be spot on, but we're going with this is where his history comes from. This is what we know, right?
Okay.
Okay. So, gotta get back to the top of my notes. Now, legend says okay, so he's born on the border between modern day Mongolia and Siberia. Legend says he's born clutching a blood clot in his hand, and if that doesn't set the stage for the rest of his life, I don't know what would.
That's so metal.
Right? Now, his youth is not an easy one. His mother is a stolen woman who is forced into marriage, right? Because this is a time and a place where we're dealing with dozens of these nomadic tribes who are constantly fighting, not only with each other, but like infighting, and they're also stealing everything from each other, right? So, that said, you can sort of imagine how this plays out for women and children that are just trying to live their lives, right? Like, things aren't great for them. To say that his life and that the life of his mother was a violent one is an absolute understatement. Before he's even 10, his father's poisoned by an enemy clan and dies. At this point, Temujin's mother and at least six siblings and him are basically deserted by their own clan because feeding that many extra people is hard. So their main source of like sustenance and protection came from his father, right? And once he's dead, the clan outs them. Like you're toast. But don't worry. Temujin steps up and killed his older half brother because he's not doing a great job leading their tiny clan either. And he's only 10. Now he becomes the new leader of their very poor, very destitute house that they are currently operating within, right? He gets captured by the former clan and they enslave him. We're looking at our preteens. He escapes. At some point after he escapes, he meets and marries a girl called Bort, and they have at least four sons and an unknown number of daughters.
This checks.
Right? Okay. Now, at one point, his wife Bort, she gets kidnapped, and he is like, absolutely not. He sets out to rescue her. And History.com says that this is around the time he begins making these alliances as well as building this reputation as this like warlord warrior. Not only that, but he is also attracting this ever increasing number of followers. Like he is not losing, he is winning, and people want to be on his side. So he starts gaining this good amount of power and this great following. And he goes against like the customs and the nepotism of his time, and he puts competent allies in key leadership positions instead of relatives. Like, just because you're my father-in-law doesn't mean you're actually good at this job.
What a concept.
I know, wild, right? Go find Dave. He can do it. So he would also execute the leaders of enemy tribes, but at the same time of their execution, he is incorporating the clan's remaining members into his own. So, like,
Mergers and
your boss,
acquisitions.
yeah, like your boss sucks. Come work for me, right? Okay. So, as far as his rules of war go, he would not allow any looting until the battle was a complete victory. He organizes his warriors into groups of 10, regardless of whether or not they're kin, which is a huge thing. And I personally think that was a solid move on their part because if you're forcing them to have to work together, eventually they're going to work together. And now you're just building strength in numbers. By the year 1205, he's conquered all of his power rivals and begins establishing a nation comparable in size to modern day Mongolia. He's got representatives in every territory. And it takes about a year to do all of this organizing. And right around this time is the point that he changes his name to Genghis Khan, or as we in the West say, Genghis Khan, which basically means universal ruler, which is kind of cool. Like, I didn't know that until recently,
I mean, if you could call yourself anything.
right? Yeah. Now, once he's united all of his people, he rules over at least 1 million people and a minimum of 9 million square miles.
Dang.
Some articles suggest up to 12 million at his height. Either way, it's a huge chunk of space. He's got followers of his own animist faith, Christians, Muslims, and Buddhists. And one of the things that I've read before but didn't include in my notes is that within his camp, there was religious freedom. Like it wasn't, you didn't have to follow what he followed. Which is interesting when you think about like the fact that he's a conqueror, but that works, right?
Right.
So now he goes on, he does a bunch of other conquering, including making his way all the way to Germany. Did you know that?
I think I did. I think I did at some point pull up a map. Now, if you said, Teresa, how far did he get? Would I say Germany? No. But if you
Because
say,
it's
did you
so
know that? I'd be
wild.
like, yeah.
Yeah, it to me, I knew that. Like I've read things and watched things and listened to things on con like for my whole life, but to hear it again, I was like, Germany. That seems so far away from where he started. At one point, his empire spans from the Sea of Japan to the Caspian Sea in the west. So, whew. Now, for the sake of time, I'm going to skip straight to his death because this is really where the story that I want to tell you takes place. Well, actually, it takes place 700 years later. It's 1227, and the Khan and his army are out warring and conquering. He gets thrown from his horse and he suffers these internal injuries that never heal. And he dies from these injuries on August 18th, 1227. Or maybe he takes an arrow and it gets infected. Or maybe, according to live science, he gets the plague. These are the most accepted stories of his death. Um, but another one is suggested that he was castrated by a princess of the Tangut people and kind of bleeds out and dies.
Oh,
Yeah, I mean, like either way, it's a gnarly death. Whether he suffers internal injuries, he gets the arrow, he gets the plague, whatever the case may be. He leads an early life, he lives an early death. Now, upon his death, his request, like as he's dying, is to be buried in secret. He wants no one knowing of his final resting place. His men are grieving, but they honor his wishes. They carry him home in secret and kill anyone that they meet along the route.
dang.
Like you're just out picking flowers, you're toast. Now, the story goes that when the great Khan is finally put to rest in his tomb, his soldiers ride 1,000 horses over it to destroy any remaining evidence of the once great Lord of War, and then supposedly, a river is diverted to flow over the burial site. Again, to ensure no one ever finds it. Okay, so fast forward like 700 years. People have been looking for his tomb this whole time. But one of the big things that's working against literally every explorer is that his own people, like even modern day Mongolians today, want to honor his wishes. So they do everything in their power to ensure you're not going to find his tomb. Whether or not they know where it's at is irrelevant.
Right.
Like they are honoring his wishes. So good luck, I guess. So this gentleman called Pyotr Kozlov, he's born on October 3rd, 1863, in Russia, in a town that would be far more respectable if I didn't try to pronounce it, but I will if you like.
I mean, considering what I did in the last episode with the Italian, I realized I should have just continued to skip over. I'm skip over.
Okay, great, because I just feel so much more respectable not even trying. Um, And like I said, mentioned earlier, his sources on his life are almost nothing in English. I watched a documentary last night that was in Russian just to try to figure some stuff out. I know nothing in
But
Russian.
did you figure out Russian to be able to actually understand?
No, I read the translated captions at the bottom and they were minuscule and very roughly translated. So I was able to learn some things, but not. I feel like there's a lot more that we could learn, but there's just nothing in the West about this guy other than these two articles that I found. So, all that to say, what I do know is that his parents basically plan a military life for him, but that's not his jam. He joins the expedition of his mentor, of a man who goes on to be his mentor, called Nikolai Prevalsky, into Asia. Now, his mentor teaches him everything about the trade. He teaches him how to be explorer. He teaches him how to be an archaeologist. He teaches him the science of surveying and like all of the things you need to know to be good at what they're doing. He teaches him all of it. And then he dies. So our guy Kozlov, he continues traveling with the other successors of this mentor, a fellow named Petstov and Robovsky. By 1895, Robovsky is sick and he's ailing, so Kozlov takes like general command of the expedition. By 1901, he's explored and will later write about the upper reaches of the Yellow River, the Yangtze River, and the Mekong River. Now, these are all like, this is a pretty big deal for anybody in Russia, but it is like the first time the outside world is getting to experience some of these things about just the Asian continent as a whole.
Right.
Like up to this point, we don't know a ton, right? Now, that expedition would earn him the Constantine Medal in 1902, and this is like the closest I can akin it to is like something that our National Geographic would hand out. In fact, he ends up getting like medals and accolades from most of the geographic societies around the world. Like they're so impressed by what he's doing. So, our guy is a Russian explorer during the time of the Great Games, which I had to look up because I was like, what the heck is the Great Games? It's basically 19th and earliest 20th century, this rivalry between the British and Russian empires for control in Central Asia. Think Afghanistan, Persia, Tibet. Like they are vying for who's got the most power and the most leeway here, right? So both powers, British and Russian, they use military and diplomatic means to expand their influence. Eventually, Russia takes Turkestan and Britain expands all the way to British India. By the earliest 20th century, by the early 20th century, much of the region is divided into these protectorates that are controlled by both empires. So there's kind of a lot of coming and going. Um, and during this time, the British War Office is paying super close attention to Goloslov. He's on pretty good terms with everybody, including the other explorers in the area, but the British War Office is like, they're watching him.
Mm.
There was a moment in 1905 that gives the War Office what they called a quote fright. And that is because our guy meets the Dalai Lama, who expresses interest in settling in Russia at some point. Which is like, wait,
Oh,
excuse me? Right.
I didn't think that was
Uh,
something he like
right?
was he ask or was it like have you thought of coming to Russia?
So I think what's happening, okay, so this is the early 20th century. There is a lot of upheaval in China and in the Tibetan region as well. So we're dealing with like the politics of Tibet. We're dealing with the politics of China. We're dealing with Russians coming in wanting to explore, and we're also dealing with the British who are trying to gain more power and more sway here as well. And the Dalai Lama is sort of stuck in the middle of all of these like kind of hotbed tension zones. So the way I understand it is that he basically the Dalai Lama makes friends with our guy Kozlov, and Kozlov is sort of one of the only outsiders that's invited into his home. And while they're meeting, he's like, "Hey, um, I I'm thinking Russia might be a great place for me. That said, I think somebody in our group here needs to do a deep dive on the 20th century Dalai Lama because there is a ton of like political espionage happening with him. It's wild. Koslov, for his part, is like, I will do what I can, but also knows the Russian government is watching him because this is now like we're getting ready to pull into the Bolshevik Revolution. And like World War II is happening. Like there's stuff going on that he's just like, I'm literally just trying to do my job, right? So between the years of 1907 and 1909, he explores the Gobi Desert and he discovers the ruins of this city called Karakoto, which for whatever reason had already been discovered by someone else who sends him a letter. Like on the eve of their departure, he's like, "Yo, I already found it, but like we still need you to come out." So, team effort, I guess. Um Now, Koto is it's actually a really special city. The words translate to Black City. We also know it as the Dead City. Marco Polo describes it in his travels, which is pretty cool, right?
Oh,
So,
I had no idea.
right? Marco Polo is fascinating. That's also someone we should do a deep dive on. Anyway, that all that said, Genghis Khan first takes this city in 1226. So just shortly before he dies. Then his grandson, Kublai Khan, triples it in size during his lifetime. So
Honestly,
this,
that's a pretty good move considering most regimes seem to fall apart from father to son to
right?
grandson.
Right, yeah, no, not with the Khans. And this city sort of, the way that I understand it, it is almost like it sits at this weird crossroads of technology and innovation and commerce and travel, but at the same time, it's so far set apart from everything else that they don't trade in like they're sheep herders and like keep to themselves. But everybody know in Marco Polo's time, like everybody knows it's there. But then fast forward a little bit, 1372, the Ming dynasty shows up and they essentially sack the place and it would quite literally disappear to the sands of time. So Kublai Khan did a great job and then 1372 rolls around and the Ming dynasty's like, "Nope, you're done." um because I guess that's how expansion works. Now, the exploration and the excavation of the city would take years and a ton of collaborative efforts on the part of all forms of academics and scientists and explorers, all type of things. During this time, some 2,000 books, scrolls, and manuscripts of the Tangut language are uncovered, and this is a big deal. Like
Mm.
up to this point, we've seen very little, and then all of a sudden, all of these like just treasure trove of information comes out. Fast forward a little bit, our guy Koslov makes his last expedition to the area between the years 1923 and 1926 with his young wife. She is 29 years his junior.
Oh gosh. That,
Yeah,
whoa. I was like
that's a
29 years old. That's young. His junior. Good
yeah,
grief.
yeah. Her name is Elizabeth Puskarinova, and she serves as the expedition's ornithologist. So she's big into birds.
So she's well trained. He is old.
Yes. And one of the things that the husband found for me while I was telling him last night, like I wish I could just find more information on this guy because I think he had a really, really interesting life, but there's like nothing in the West for me to see. I don't speak Russian. I can't read Russian. Like I don't feel like if I Google Translate this, it's going to come out telling me the truth. Like, you know what I mean? Well, one of the things that he discovered was that his wife actually would go on to publish several of Koslov's works. And like she worked diligently for decades to ensure that his legacy and his findings were stated and known. Like that they just didn't get left on the shelf, which I think is really cool because she's doing her own job, but then she's also cementing his work to like history. I
Right.
think is pretty cool, right? Now, she publishes several scientific papers and monographs on the birds of Central Asia. Like this, she's super into this, which I think is pretty cool. Now, during this last push through Mongolia and Tibet, there's a discovery of a number of remarkable burials belonging to the Shengnu people. They're uncovered at a location called Nyoin Ula, and he takes some incredible samples of 2,000-year-old textiles related to the people of that era at that time back to Petrograd. Because basically, for whatever reason, and I think this is fascinating, he goes to the like Mongolian authorities and he says, I have these samples, I have these textiles, I have these things. Here you go. You take the best of them. Would it be okay if I take samples home?
That
And they're
is,
like, yeah, thank you for the work you did.
that's the opposite of the
What
British
we know,
Museum.
right? Right? Like there's a comment in one of the articles that I read that talks about how he was allowed to keep so many of the things he found that like his office was basically a small, very cluttered little museum because the Russian government and the Mongolian government never saw him as a problem. They
Oh,
just saw him as someone doing their job. So like he gave them what they wanted and he was allowed to keep a few things here and there. So I'm like, good for you.
could you imagine inheriting his stuff and going through it later?
Oh my gosh, yeah. I mean, they found some really remarkable things. I should have included photos. I'm sorry, I did not think to do that till just now. Now, after this, so it's 1926, he takes these textiles home. He goes to Petrograd. He's doing, the archaeological thing. He's writing the stuff down. He's making the notes, and then he retires. Um, this is ridiculous. But before I can tell you that, there is that article that I told you about from the Illinois website, The True Republican. It's titled The Garden of Eden Gives Up Bones of New Species. I'm just gonna, it was wild. I recommend it. They go on to describe all the things he found while on this expedition, the new types of fossils they found, the new types of textiles they found. They found carpets that were so well preserved you could still see the artwork. Like
In the rugs.
thousands of years old. Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
So, so like it's a big deal. So, okay, he retires though, and and true to the style of his mentor, he sets about building his retirement hut and living a peaceful life. Unclear why that's the thing you do, but he does it. His wife and kids visit often, but they don't seem to live with him. It's like he literally just
He just
went
became
out,
a
built a
hermit.
hut. Basically, yeah, an extroverted hermit because he's still visiting with people and he's still going about in the world, but he's like just doing his own thing. Um, then in late 1927, an article is released first in the London Sunday Express, then the New York Times. And that article starts off saying what I mentioned earlier, the tomb of Genghis Khan, the great Mongolian conqueror who lived from 1162 to 1227 AD, has been discovered by Professor Pyotr Kozlov, a Russian archaeologist, near the ruins of the dead city of Karakoto in the Gobi Desert. Now, it goes on to tell this extraordinary story about how Professor Kozlov has found the missing tomb, and it gives this great description. It says, the great Khan's bones, I mentioned this a little while ago, but the whole description is phenomenal. The great Khan's bones lie in a silver coffin which rests upon the 78 crowns of princes and khans whom he conquered. The secret wonders of the tomb are said to vie with those of Tutankhamun. 7 silent llamas guard it, and every 7 hours one of them strikes 7 times a huge jade bell which hangs over the sarcophagus. Jewel-studded weapons of Genghis, his own story of his reign written in Tartar and Chinese, a life-size lion, tiger, and horse in pink jade, and a copy of the Bible written by an English monk and a golden tablet presented by Marco Polo are also found inside the tomb. Now,
Whoa.
right? It goes on to talk about how Koslov was also able to visit the tomb of the Great Khan's favorite wife, which for whatever reason is 200 miles away. The papers says that there's an inscription on her white marble coffin that says, quote, "Per her request, and in order that she might prepare a place for him in the next world, the great Khan released her by placing his dagger in her breast, and she died in his arms 7 days before he passed." Huh.
Placing the dagger in her chest.
Isn't that such great wording there?
Like, here you go, my love, not pow.
Yeah, exactly. The article further goes on to say, quote, "The tomb lies beyond a labyrinth of passages cut into the side of the mountain. It is about 40 feet square, and once a year, a privileged descendant goes there to offer sacrifices in the Khan's memory. On the anniversary of the Khan's death, the professor was told his ghost arises and blows out the lamps and leads the chief lama to a black slab at the back of the shrine where, with the priest hands, the ghost writes the prophecies of the coming year. Kozlov said he was guided to the tomb by Genghis Khan's 18th direct descendant, Aslan Genghis Khan, to whom he was sent by Aslan's Russian-educated brother. Kozlov is known here as a reputable and reliable archaeologist. He received the Founders Medal of the Royal Geographical Society in 1911 for his exploration work in Central Asia. So, can you imagine a write-up like that in an international paper about yourself?
No, I can't.
Like, our guy, he's got some real big feelings about this. So he does the logical thing and he reaches out to the paper and tries to set the record straight. Because remember, he's retired. He's turned in his paperwork. He's built his retirement hut. Um, then so he, like I said, he reaches out to the paper. The November 11th edition of the paper, both the New York Times and the Sunday London Express, says, quote, "Displeased by the story in a London newspaper that he had discovered the tomb of Genghis Khan, especially the account that said the discovery outshone Tutankhamun and Aladdin's cave." So he's not happy. Professor Kozlov feels that he is being held up to the ridicule of his fellow scientists because of a story that he never authorized, by which had just enough basis of truth to make some think he was playing to the gallery. I love that line. He was playing to the gallery. The columnist describes him as a, quote, "modest, simple soul. This great explorer is the last man in the world to seek banal notary or spurious fame." The good professor goes on to explain what he thinks the mix-up was. So basically, on his last trip to Mongolia, he stops at this like four-way caravan stop, hops off his camel, and has tea with two native, like local guides. When he notices this rather peculiar ridge on top of this nearby plateau, and he asks the guides about it, and they claim they don't know what it is. He doesn't believe him for 1 second. So he walks up to the ridge himself, and this is what he says he saw. Quote, "The ridge proved to be a circular mound of rock with small mounds of stones arranged symmetrically round a 50-foot radius with a circular path and four paths leading in at the center at right angles. Near the center mound, there was an obelisk of simple rock, rough hewn about 5 feet high, with stones heaped around the base. On the obelisk were these drawings." He then goes on to show the reporter a sketch of this animal that's described as resembling a deer in the act of leaping, one of the most familiar motifs in the gold relics in the Hermitage Museum of the Scathosarmatic tombs, and a series of curious hieroglyphs which closely resembled the rock inscriptions of the same period. Now, this is really exciting for me, but I can't tell you why, so I'm very sorry. You're just going to have to take my word for it. Kozlov then goes on to say he believed that someone of great import was buried there and that those were pilgrimage stones that were surrounding it. And this indicates that people are coming every summer and priests are placing the stones as offerings in this outer circle around the mound because it would be considered sacrilegious to approach it any closer. So, like, he's just putting two and two together,
Yeah.
right? His final remarks on the tomb are as follows. "My opinion is that it would require a year to investigate the site properly should the consent of the Mongolian authorities be obtained, which would be difficult. Doubtless, this it is a tomb of a great personages, as its situation atop such a height is most unusual, and the magnificent view extending for hundreds of kilometers makes it worthy of a world conqueror. It is true that the sepulchre of Genghis Khan is unknown, but the nature of the inscriptions makes me think that this tomb is far older. At any rate, I can assure you that I neither said nor have I written anything regarding this discovery, which, as I told you, I only visited at a haphazard and did not intend to investigate. So he sees this cool burial mound and he's like, that's great. I'm gonna retire. So one of you young bucks can come out and dig this up. Like,
He
okay,
saw it,
bye.
saw all the
And
work, and
also,
went, I'm too old for this.
where are the strapping youths? You know? Yeah. Um, so like I said, finding any information about him and about this incident was nearly impossible. But what I want to know is like while he isn't um like seems to be getting along with everybody, who would write the first article? Who would release this like
The clickbait.
remarkable event? Yeah,
Exactly that. Like somebody who's like, ooh, I didn't do my work. I'm about to get fired. I need something. You know what?
it's been a slow news day.
I can make
Yeah,
this work.
right.
I can
I
clickbait
think
this.
I think that's what it was. I think that it was just a slow news day because despite everything I tried to find and the one paper that was translated into English from the Bibliological Society, they only mention very briefly that he may have had a rival once, but even in that, I don't necessarily think that the guy was a rival. I think that he tried to put the kibosh on one of their expeditions, saying that he was too close to the Russian military because we're in the time of the Bolsheviks. But other than that one moment and that one like vague reference to this random guy that was like, please don't go, it seems like he didn't really have any enemies. So to me, I think it's just clickbait.
Yeah. I mean, because
But I mean,
let's
I
think about it.
guess,
If it was an enemy, what would the enemy get out of it other than making him look cooler than he was?
I mean, at minimum, he besmirches his name and like takes his reliability off the board, but he's already retired.
Yeah, that's not going to do
So
much.
he's not trying to he's built his retirement hut, damn it. He just wants to fish. Like that's it. But when I read that article, I was like, I need to know everything I can possibly learn. So either way, whether someone was just trying to besmirch his good name or it was a slow news day, that's the story of the time Genghis Khan's tomb was almost found.
I love that. I have to tell you that when you did get on that list of the things, I was like, wow, wow, and pink jade, and my brain was trying to imagine, like, I was all over it, and then to realize, no, I fell for the clickbait. I
You
fell,
did,
f
but you know what? Not entirely, because in Mongolia there is this temple, for lack of a better word, that hosts the idea of Genghis Khan's tomb. It's like a replica of what they think it could have looked like. And they've moved it around several times to protect it, like from different wars and things like that. But I do not believe there are any life-size pink jade horses in there.
I mean, they sound gorgeous if they exist.
Right? Yeah, I think so too. I want to see the 78 crowns of the princes and khans that he
Oh,
conquered.
that would just be, that is a throne of swords.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like, how did you weld them together that his tomb can sit right on top of it? Like, that's what I'm imagining.
Yeah. Well, I've enjoyed this. This has been good. And I hadn't even thought about doing tombs for a spooky season episode. So
Yeah,
I'm impressed. Well done.
thanks. Well,
And
if it makes you feel any better, I was going to do Mary Shelley next week.
If you two are impressed and grateful that you get to learn about tombs and whatnot, rate, review, subscribe, share this with your favorite would be a great clickbait article writer. And on that note, goodbye.
Bye.